decision of lockdown had not taken, you
Right.
would have said, oh, probably the decision was
So we are
wrong.
live now.
Okay, okay, we are live. All
All right.
right. So, namaste, Vivek ji, and welcome to the HR Experience Conversations, OD HR Experience Conversations.
Hi, Jerry. Good evening and good morning to everyone, wherever
Good
they are.
morning, good afternoon. Greetings to everyone. Namaste, like we always say, and welcome to the HR Experience Conversation. It's a pleasure to have you with us as one of the global HR heads of a large organization. We're looking forward to learning a lot from you, not just me and my colleagues and associates, but also all the people who will be logging in on the Facebook page to get some insights about what are the best practices that one can kind of employ and deploy in organizations to create best practices for learning, best practices for people development, and best practices to unleash and develop human potential. So welcome, Vivekji, once again. And I would just like to start by asking you to tell us a little more about yourself, about your journey of life, and how you kind of ended up choosing HR as a profession and preferred choice of vocation.
All right. Well, thanks, Jerry, for this introduction. Thanks for the good words that you have for me, and I appreciate you inviting me
You're
for
welcome.
this particular initiative of yours. Happy to be associated with you. Number one.
Thank you so
Number
much.
two,
Thank you so much. Means a lot.
yeah, those who've joined us over Facebook, those who are in India, happy Makar Sankranti, Pongal, Bihu, wherever you are in the part of the country, happy festivals and greetings to you all. Jerry, I really, when I look back, right, I'm not that big. Whatever good words that you had for me, but when I look at it, I did grow up in a village, a typical coastal Maharashtra village,
Right.
right? That's where I grew up, and I take a pride in saying, right, I did not know how to speak in English when I grew up. I was in a local Marathi medium school, grown up boy, right, in a
Right.
village.
Right.
But then a couple of decisions which I took, when I look back, I think that did well for me and for my career, was to leave my native place.
Right.
That's number one. And I would
Okay.
advise everyone, and I do tell this to my team also. If you have to grow up in the ladder, if you have to grow up in your career,
Right.
uh, management three, they say that, right? Get out of your chair. Similarly, get out of your place,
Get out of your
right?
comfort zone.
Somewhere else, right?
Yes.
You would have ample time to focus on your career
Right.
than working in your own native city. So that's
Right.
one. So I went to Pune. I did my graduation and my studies in Pune, and I joined a local recruiting firm in Pune, and that's where I went to that person for job.
Okay.
Right, he was a management recruitment placement consultant.
Right.
I went to him for a job through a reference of a friend of mine.
Right.
I don't know what he found in me, but then he ended up in hiring me for whatever reason.
Okay. And which city was this in?
Yes, right. And I joined him. I did work in that area for about 3 to 4 years. I
Which
joined
city?
him.
I was saying, which city was this in?
Pune. It was Pune.
Pune. Pune. Okay. So you started from
Right.
Pune.
So
Excellent.
since 1988 onwards, I was in Pune.
Right. Right.
Right?
Okay.
And joined this firm. One of the most rare people in the world. I started my career on my birthday.
Right.
I never take a holiday on my birthday.
Right.
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 I worked there for about 3 4 years, and then I joined ABC Consultants, one of the largest executive search firm, pioneer in executive search in India.
Right.
I worked with them for a good 3 years in
Yes.
Pune, and that's
Right.
where the trip to the other side of table happened.
Right.
Went and joined NIIT.
Okay.
By far the best company that I have worked with so
R-
far in my career.
Right. This is Rajendra Pawar and gang.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
They're brilliant leaders. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And those
Yes.
who claim they are the what I would say best HR driven organizations.
Right. Right. Right.
I won't name those organizations, but I know R.S. Pawar and Rajendran, P. Rajendran, Raju, and others have been visiting those organizations to teach them on management development and organization development. Right.
Right.
So I did work with NIT for 6 years, and that's where the change that happened. I went from Pune, which that time happened to be my base location. I shifted from there to Delhi, and that's the biggest, second biggest change which happened from career standpoint. So
Right.
worked in Delhi, worked in Pune, worked in Delhi with an IIT, then came to Hyderabad, joined Satyam Computers,
Right.
worked in Hyderabad for 2 years and relocated to Bangalore. And since then, I've been in Bangalore for last now. I'll complete 16 years in Bangalore. Terrific city. Have moved on one outer ring road, three jobs within Bangalore itself, right? Uh, I think what happened to me from career standpoint is the whole approach towards HR. Like I would say, all HR folks should work in recruiting first,
Right. Right.
right? And that's where you get to know in terms of how the market is driven, what people look at when they join the organization. So that's
Right.
where I think all HR folks who are looking at to start a career in HR should work in recruiting first. Do a lot of interviews. I've conducted more than 10,000 interviews so far in my career, maybe more than that.
Wow. That's because you were also working with, you also worked with ABC.
ABC and NIIT, I was in recruiting only.
Okay. Okay. Excellent.
My non-recruitment HR stint started with Satyam in
Right.
Bangalore,
Right.
right?
Right. So you've been
So,
around quite a lot, huh?
well, totally. Now I should be completing 3 decades of corporate experience in a couple of months. Fair
Right.
enough.
Right. May I request you to unpack why you say that people who want to really specialize in HR should do a lot of recruitment and interviewing first? What is the reason you say that?
See, HR is all about you have I've been all along working with IT companies, right? And or if I correlate with manufacturing companies, you have this hardware or a material that you manage, and you
Right.
produce either a car or you produce some heavy industry material or any consumer material. You do some finishing on it. In IT
Right.
industry, the finished product is your top-notch software consultant that you have in the organization, right?
Right. Right.
So when you are interviewing somebody, when you're hiring somebody, that's where you get to know the pulse of people in terms
Right.
of what they're looking at. And that helps you to
Right.
really develop and retain them in the organization.
Right.
Unless you know what kind of material that's coming in your company, how would you be able to produce a finished product with that particular material?
Right. Right. Right.
Right? So that's I would say.
So you're,
Uh,
you're 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 talking about the entry point, about how you recruit people and use best practices of recruitment to kind of bring in the most essential. I won't call it the best talent, because you just can't have a company full of best talent. You need most essential talent in different places. Is that what you're saying?
yes, I would say whichever talent that you are hiring, you need to
Right.
be convinced that that's the best talent.
Okay. Okay.
Right? That's your benchmark. Now, my
Right.
benchmark, your benchmark, or somebody else's benchmark would be different. But
Right.
if I'm to a benchmark, that's the best benchmark for me, right?
Right. Right.
I would never ever say that I'm hiring wrong people or I'm hiring a diluted talent.
Right. Right. No,
Whatever talent that I'm hiring is the best talent for sure,
okay.
and I need to create a better one out of that.
Okay. And the reason I'm kind of having a merry-go-round or a jerry-go-round with you on this is because I have some interesting insights on this which I want to share with you later. Because
Sure.
the post which I put up about you, because I know about your specialization in recruitment and interviews, and the post that I sent out actually said higher character, train competence, right?
True.
while
True.
while in most places I think people hire competence and don't know how to train character, right? Because training character is a very difficult job. As a leadership coach, I can tell you that. I mean, working with several people. But the insight that you started with, that people who want to specialize in HR as a vocation, as a specialty, as a subject matter expert, should basically interview. Because are you saying that because you understand what a human connection and human potential is all about in the process of interviewing? Well, interviews are conversations. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, absolutely, and interviews are typically are the tools that would get you insights in terms of what this X number of people are looking at from your organization, and
Right.
that you define your hiring and retention and development strategy.
Right. Right.
Right? It creates that baseline,
Right. Right.
and as you said a little while ago, right? You can't hire all stars.
Also,
If you have
yes, you
all
can't.
stars, All if you have all stars in project or in a company, the company is bound to fail or a project is
it,
bound to
it
fail.
it will completely fail because there'll be so many ego clashes, and you know that there is proven research to show you that
Yeah.
average people, not the toppers, are the best workers and the
Yeah.
most loyal workforce. I mean, this is a study done by HBR, especially after the Taj 2611
Yes.
incident, where nobody in the Taj hotel left the
Yes.
premises, right? Because Karambir Kang, who was the general manager at that time, whose family was trapped in the room, actually told people to leave. But people didn't leave because even though they had an exit, they didn't leave. They said, no, we are not going to leave till each of our guests leaves, right? And it is amazing that employees who were not in the hotel entered the hotel because they wanted to be a part of the action and serve. So it shows you that there is a certain character which comes up with growing up in the middle class, growing up in an average background, not just because when you're a topper and overly intelligent and go to these fancy schools and expensive education universities, then the sense of entitlement comes into you. So if you have an organization of full of stars, it'll be a very arrogant, egoistic organization. Work
Yeah.
won't be done. Would you agree with what I'm sharing with you?
200%. 200%. I
Ha-
think
have you observed this in
I
many,
won't
many
say,
places?
yeah, I won't say Taj alone. I would
Right.
say
No, no, I was using that example
Tata Group.
because
I would say Tata Group
yes,
as a something that we should look up to,
right,
right? In terms of, and it is essentially the values and the systems and processes that they've created. Like,
right,
and now you would have read the photo of Ratan Tata making rounds everywhere on LinkedIn and everywhere on WhatsApp,
right,
that meeting a ailing employee in Pune on his
right,
own without any escort or any pilot vehicle or whatever, whatever. But
right,
then that talks about the humility, that talks about the value system, and that talks about the overall emotional connect that people have with the organization or people have with the leader.
right. And you pick
And
this
that's the
along
character. And that's the character.
the
That's the
character.
character,
Right,
right?
absolutely. Because
Right.
if an organization also has character, then surely the employees will also fall in line within the value system,
Absolutely,
right? While if
absolutely.
an organization has no character, and I won't name any organization, but you you would know, I mean, a stark opposite to Tata is another company which has no character, and the people therein also have no character, right? Then you're doing all the jiggery pogery and fakery of the world. But
I'll,
that's it.
I'll give you one example which I personally myself went through on character and this thing, right? I
Right,
worked with a fantastic organization named Satyam Computers.
right, right.
I worked with them for 6 years.
Okay,
I still love that company.
right, right,
Uh, the Satyam scandal happened, and
right.
I was in that organization. I did work with them over after the acquisition for almost a year or so.
So were you
Right?
there during the scandal or after the
No,
scandal?
absolutely. No, I joined them in 2003 end, and
Oh,
I
okay.
worked
You joined them in 2003. That that that
end,
that's
and
that's
I
that
worked with
that's
them,
that's when the hollowing out had started.
and I worked with them till 2010. So, and the
Okay.
scandal happened exactly 11 years back. 9th of Jan 2009 was the day when the scandal happened.
Right.
Now, there's an
Right.
interesting thing, right? The kind of experiences. Hello, you're there, right? I'm audible, right?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
The kind of experiences that I have got personally
Right.
during this particular thing was amazing. Uh, you don't know how you would be paying salaries to your employees. You don't know what kind of customers would retain with you, would be continuing with you,
Right.
right? When the scandal was surfaced, uh, 3 months that organization, even though there was a panel that was set up by the company, by the government to set everything straight,
Right.
right? People work extra hours
Right.
to really generate revenue for the company. There
Right.
were customers who came in who said, who and I have been witnessed to those kind of scenarios. Customers who came forward and said, "Guys, we trust you. Forget about what happened and who did it or whatever, whatever." There are a handful of people who did the mischief, right?
Right.
But there were customers who came in saying that we trust the other balance 50,000 people. We will pay you ahead of the scheduled time frame for payment, and
Right.
that's where we could pay out salaries for our employees.
Right. Right.
And that's where I talk. I typically what happens business, and this is on a lighter side. Business leaders typically blame HR for the talent that they are hiring, or their HR is more of a
Absolutely.
HR is more of a those kind of a job, and no ground level realities and those kind of a thing. But they were, but looking at this, the business leaders and especially the customer said they have a trust in HR and the people that we've hired, and
Right.
that talks about the whole scenario in terms of how we overcome that particular aspect. Later on, Tech Mahindra came in, and I still believe the government of that time did a mistake by selling it off to Tech Mahindra.
Right.
Had given an opportunity to the remaining leadership, I believe that leadership would have run the company better than anybody else.
You think that on its own, Satyam could have been salvaged?
It did work for 3 months for sure. 3 months and 14 days, it did work on its own.
Absolutely. And that's after the crash, after
After the
knowing that it was completely hollowed out.
9th of January 2009 was the announcement that happened.
Right.
And I think 14th January, 14th April or 23rd of April, either of these 2 dates,
Right.
the Techem acquisition announcement happened. And that's where Techem came in, pumped in money, all that stuff happened.
Right.
But then not even once a failure on paying salaries.
Right. Right.
And to the best of my knowledge, I have no direct information on it, but I don't think so. The company did touch the 500 crores that was kept in a bank account uh, by the government panel.
Right.
Right? They
Right. That
kept,
that that, that was led by Kiran Karnik and
Kiran
others.
Karnik and Mr. Parekh and
Deepak Parekh and others. Yes.
Deepak
Yeah.
Parekh and I think Mr. Manoharan of LIC.
Right. Right.
So they were there. That this is what I understood. Right, we
Right.
company did not touch those 500 crores, but paid salaries through through accruing and claiming money ahead of schedule,
Right.
and people putting extra hours to really bill and generate more revenue for the company. These two things happened, and I think, and that's a classic example. People talk about Satyam as a scandal in a scandalous way, which is
Right.
true. It happened.
Yeah. That is because the promoters were all rogues and
Yeah,
rascals.
it happened. But
Yeah.
then there are stories like this also which have happened.
Right. No. And I always say that the culture of an organization is made by the people and the employees of the organization, not the promoter of an organization. But at the same time, if a promoter is rogue and is doing everything wrong, that also kind of ripples out and flows down. So
Absolutely.
I think there are classic black swan theories over here, where the promoters can be rogue, and yet the employees have a very robust positive culture. And I think what you're talking about is Satyam having that positive culture, because the employees were working there for long on different processes, and they decided to stick around, even though, I mean, the company was going through a turmoil at that time. It was not just a scandal, it was a turmoil, because over 7 years an entire organization was hollowed out by the promoters, right? And and I find it very surprising in hindsight. I said this way back in 2009. I keep saying it in a lot of my talks, because Ramalinga Raju, the perception management I was talking to you about before we went live on Facebook, the perception was that he's like a IT czar. When truth be told, Ramalinga Raju has no clue about IT, right? He's more of a real estate baron, but he was promoted by the Chandrababu Naidu, Chandrababu, uh,
The current chief minister Jagan's father, who
Jagan's father, YSR, and before that, the other chap, I forget his name. They had promoted him as this IT genius, which he was not at all. And I think his real love and passion was for real estate, and that's where he hollowed out the
by the way,
organization. Yeah,
by the way,
yeah,
and I agree with you on Ramalinga Raju's credentials on IT,
right.
but we should give him one credit for sure. He could lead all the IT czars in the company. He could give them that particular motivation, right?
Absolutely.
Whatever
So,
said and done.
so he managed. I mean, he was a shrewd guy. I've spoken with him in a couple of forums. One was the forum at ISB,
Hmm.
and one was the forum organized by the US consulate in Hyderabad. And I love the way he would come in with his entourage and promote this larger than life image about himself. And I would always stay far away from him, because I knew about him, and I knew that sometime the bubble would burst. Anyway, now walking through your journey, you said you started in Pune. Which organization was that?
Well, the first one where I started as the recruiting consultant and ABC consultants,
Okay, so
and
you started with
1 year,
ABC.
yeah, there is a firm called Monarch Consultant. I don't know whether that
Yes,
exists now.
yes, I've heard of them. Yeah,
Yeah, so Monarch Consultants and ABC Consultant. And initial 1 year of my NIT
right.
was in, and then it was Delhi, and then it
Sorry,
was
I lost you for a minute over there. Initial 1 year of NIT was with,
Pune, in
yeah,
Pune.
in
Then
Pune
I moved with NIT in Delhi, to Delhi.
to Delhi. You moved to Delhi. Okay,
I
and
moved to Delhi.
how with NIT you were there for 6 years.
6 years NIT, 6 years Satyam, and 6 years Headstrong Gen Pact.
Okay, okay, Headstrong Gen Pact. Okay,
Yeah, so that was an
so
acquisition.
Headstrong is the Arjun Malhotra company,
That is right.
which was then acquired by Genpact.
And- yeah. So I've seen those forced acquisition of Satyam and a regular acquisition like Headstrong. The two acquisitions that I've anyway seen in this journey for sure from HR standpoint.
Right, and Arjun Malhotra, of course, was a more shrewd guy than Ramalinga Raju, because he's also a big loan defaulter. By the way, SBI had actually released a full half-page ad on him, right, about him defaulting on loans, and but
I
he didn't
do not,
get caught.
I really do not. I hold him at a very high place and high regard.
Right,
Amazing person,
right,
amazing person. I think these are the kind of people who set the tone for the industry for sure.
right,
Malhotra and the NIT leadership or the leadership back here in various companies in Bangalore, right?
right,
I'm
right.
sure there could be some financial transactions, and I'm no way to comment on that for
No, no,
sure.
surely I was just sharing with you that this was a full page ad released by SBI. This was around 10 years ago, and I remember I was setting up the Public Health Foundation of India, and
Hmm.
he was one of our donors, and I brought this to the notice of the board. I said we have to be careful who you bring on board. So that's what. Uh,
Wonderful.
that
So
said,
that
you
was Headstrong and Genpact that happened for 6 years.
right,
I moved on to this firm, which is a US based firm,
right,
took up a role of a global head of human capital.
right,
And it was a complete greenfield HR function setup, right? Uh, there were no processes, no systems. People did
right,
not have appraisals for years together.
right,
People, surprisingly, people did work without any revisions, compensation revisions for years.
right,
Now that talks about either we were paying through our nose
right,
and they didn't want any hikes,
right,
or and which is the most likely reason is the kind of commitment they had with the leadership and with the organization.
right. This is your current organization you're talking about. Right. And then you kind of put all the systems and processes in place, and you
That is
create.
right. It
Yeah.
was right from creating the interview record sheets
Right.
to the performance appraisal forms and systems and engagement activities, setting up offices,
Right.
hiring large number of people. When I joined, we were about 250 people.
Right.
Now about 625.
Right.
In about 4 years time frame, we did have a significant growth from
Right.
250 to 600 plus people.
Right.
I think we've created by far biggest competency in the area that we operate, that is
Right.
identity and access management. Right, we did set up a fantastic campus to corporate program.
Right. Right.
Right? We are not like the top tens wherein we hire truckloads, right?
Right.
You send some trucks and get some people and hire them, right? We had to be absolutely selective
Right.
in terms of whom we hire because those were in hardly in some tens,
Right.
10, 20, 30s, and 40s as such.
Right.
The beauty was how do you train them and how do you develop them
Right.
to really develop the competency within. The reason for hiring them was for the character. Competency development was left to the team within the company.
Right.
Right? So we hired for character for sure, and competency is something that we did teach them.
Right. And you besides creating all the systems and processes for HR, I mean, since I've worked closely with you, I think with two batches in for leadership training, I've seen that you also kind of created a learning culture where people are sharing knowledge and sharing learning.
Absolutely, absolutely. The sense, and that did not exist till about 4 5 years back.
Right.
And when we hired people, we did specifically hire people with a specific objective in terms of those who are having learning mindset, right?
right,
Which
right,
they use it when they grow up as a manager, or if you're hiring managers directly, right? Which they would use it in the day-to-day role that they are performing in the organization. Now, learning culture, like it's a very broad term. I
right,
look at it, but then
right,
it has got only two, three simple characteristics.
right,
One, learning culture has to have a leadership buy-in or
right,
leadership blessings, is what I would say.
right,
Number two is the whole individual learning interest,
right,
right? So that's something that we have to push, and we have to take the horse to the water, and you have to make him drink.
right, right,
Otherwise, then the horse becomes obsolete,
right. And
right?
it's interesting you say that, because one of the most important and most essential skills which think tanks have discovered over the past 4 or 5 years is a skill called learning to learn.
Correct.
And technically, if you remember, like I explain it in the leadership programs, that most of us go to school and college and we study, because study is always external pressure, either the pressure of percentage, performance, parental pressure, whatever. While learning is an internalized process where you want to learn, you don't need to be told to learn. And I think that is a trait which is missing in many individuals,
True.
especially in our geography.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Now that said, I mean, you worked, you have a very kind of a diverse experience working in different geographies in different organizations, and though most of them are in the IT space and some in the recruitment space, they all have different cultures. What are some of the best practices for HR, employee engagement, and learning that you have observed in these organizations and any other organizations that you may have studied as benchmarks to create your processes for different organizations?
I'll start with my organization first, the
Right,
basic fundamental, and I've always used this. So I always refer one Sanskrit Subhashita,
right,
right? Now it essentially talks about Naksharam mantra rahitam namulam na aushadim
right,
ayogya purusham nasti yojakas tatra durlabha. What it broadly says is not a single alphabet which can't form a mantra. Is
right,
not a single root which can't be used as a medicine.
right,
Similarly, everybody has a potential.
right.
Rare is to find someone who can tap and use that potential.
Very nice, and I love that, because that's exactly what I start all my leadership talks and workshops with. That every human being has unlimited heroic potential. It's just that one has to know how to tap it. And please do send me the shloka that you just said, on
Yeah,
WhatsApp, because it completely resonates with what I say. And that's what I do in all my books, like Karmakari, where we tell stories of ordinary people. Right. And I was
yeah,
inspired by a very ordinary man who comes from a so-called lower caste. They're called Musahars,
yeah,
and they belong to the Dalit community. Until we brought their plight to the forefront in 2003, most people were not even aware that there's a community called Musahars who survive out of eating rats. And while researching that community, I happened to meet this man who was 5 feet 2 inches, Dashrath Manji, who's now popular as the Mountain Man after Ketan Mehta made a movie on him. And I remember I broke his story first on the Joy of Giving website in 2003. That I had the good fortune of meeting this man and breaking bread with him and eating food with him. And the whole idea is, if that man can move a mountain, so it's not a fairy tale or a fable. If that man can move a mountain, anyone can, right? And I completely agree with you. But the point is now, and over here, I'm going to give you a little pushback, which is that though we know this, that we have to focus on the potential which is there in every human being. Unfortunately, what I see in most organizations is that we don't focus on potential, we focus on performance. And then the focus is only on high performers, what are called as hypers or hypots, right? They're called hypots, but the focus is purely on performance. And then the high performers get kind of messed up, because the entire pressure comes onto them, because you're not developing the so-called low performers. Because there's the concept of investing in people, especially in our geography, has not yet kind of got embedded and sunk in. What are your thoughts on this?
I always look at performance, which and people who've joined over Facebook also would know it. HR fraternity would know it. Performance is always retrospective,
Right,
and potential is always prospective. It is
right,
always future.
right,
It all depends on what you want to believe in as your company and
right,
as your value system of your company.
right,
If you want to be glorified with your previous performance and past, be it. right?
right,
But
right,
then you are not going to go to the brighter horizon if
right,
you do not
absolutely.
plan for your prospects and if you do not plan for your potential,
Right,
right? So to
right,
me, I would always give a focus on potential more,
right.
and that's where the whole strategy of HR that comes in.
Very nice. And I'm happy that you're sharing this as a global HR head of an organization, because this is a huge message for everybody, that it's HR is not just a department. HR is the responsibility and
Correct.
duty, or dharma as I would call it, of every individual at any level, to develop that potential. And we need to go beyond this, calling it a resource, because when you say resource, it sounds like a liability or a cost center. It's about human potential, which is the
Yeah.
investment, which is a profit center, right? And I think that's the shift which is needed. So go ahead and tell us some more of the best practices at Simeo and other organizations.
I would still say that NIIT is an organization that I cherish in terms
Right,
of the
right,
training. NIIT happens to be the best training institute from IT point of view. Historically, they were the pioneer in that area. So training was in their blood.
right,
I was part of the software business as a hiring manager for the software business. But
right,
then that DNA was there everywhere in NIIT. So I still say NIIT has been the best training or developmental organization.
right,
Genpact by on a different pedestal or a different side, Genpact was more business specific training. Their job was to really get somebody trained as fast as possible
right.
and get
Because
that person.
you want to monetize the person soon.
And that's G, right? And that's G. But
Right,
then amazing training of Genpact. The kind
right,
of loyalty I have seen with employees who work with Genpact in Bangalore or in Hyderabad or wherever. Awesome.
right, right,
Right, awesome. So that these are the two organizations that I would say that the kind of connect and engagement that they loyalty that they created through their training efforts and training effectiveness was truly awesome.
right,
Satyam was there. Satyam was, but then Satyam was, they had a training function. They had a global learning center. They had an American coming in, relocating to India to lead training function. So
right,
all those tick marks of a large global organization where those were there.
right,
But then that was more of a cost monetization. That was the objective of the company. So
right, right. Because it was more of process training than potential training, I feel.
yes. But
Getting
then Satyam was lucky to have one of the best in class leaders. Like
right,
if you look at Satyam leadership, all were either had a history of either Tatas or IBMs or
right,
piece of the world types.
right.
And
And I would love to learn from you, because NIT per se is a knowledge organization, right?
yes,
And NIT started with IT training. That was their flagship business. And then it is but natural that you need a great learning and development, or a organization development, OD kind of culture within. So I would like to know, what are the best, considering the fact that the Gallup study shows you that 85% of the workforce who come to jobs worldwide are not engaged and they hate their jobs. Now, what are the best practices that you have seen in employee engagement in several organizations?
NIT was the first company where I experienced the individual performance and developmental plan in place.
Right. Okay.
Not many companies did have that kind of a tool that time, and
Right.
it was not as software or IT or automated savvy as we are today. So we were carrying a PDP booklet in our pockets, right? And we used to tick mark over by pen on that. What did I learn today, and how did I invested in myself,
So
right?
what I'm hearing you say is that it was monitored and reviewed. It was not
Absolutely,
just not just a tick in the checkbox.
it was not a tick in the checkbox.
Okay. Okay.
It was
Excellent.
not. Everybody had to report.
So that's
I
one activity to create a great learning culture, where you review and assess what people are learning and how they are utilizing it in their day-to-day life, not just professionally but also personally.
See, many organizations they do create individual learning and developmental plans for their
Right.
employees.
Right. And was this
But
was this a part of the
but
was this kind of part of the KRAs also?
It was. But then the difference is who owns those individual development and learning plans.
Right.
If manager and HR team is owning it, then we are mistaken. Unless
Right.
and until we make the individual employee own their learning and development plans, it will never ever be successful.
So
And that's
share some insights about how you created this individual ownership, because that's the most difficult thing to do.
Yeah, so no, I was one of the recipient of this particular model in NIT. I was not that I was not part of the team that developed this, but then
Okay.
I was one of the user of that particular piece.
Surely,
Now
but
that
I'm sure that you learned what worked over there.
and that's what we are trying to do here in my current organization CMO, in
Right.
terms of really make and empower people and own their own learning plans. And that's, forget about the investment that it requires, keep aside the money piece of it, but then the whole objective or a whole thought process that I am responsible for my career and for my development
Right.
is a different thing than HR is responsible for, or a manager is responsible
Right.
for the individual employee development as such.
Right.
So that's the shift that we have. That's
Right.
where employee have to really look at their own goals, look at their own development, and they have to sign off, and then need to report back. All that stuff. That's something that we will have to really put in together, and that's what the process which is currently on.
And I surely need to pick your brains. I know JC has joined us and she will become visible very soon. I surely need to pick your brains more on this, because this is something even I struggle with. Because after people hire me as a coach, and I keep telling them that, growth does not mean the next big promotion and raise. Growth means learning. Because if you're not growing here, you're not growing in life. Because you can't get different results by doing the same thing, which means
Yeah.
you need to read, you need to learn, you need to practice the learning. And it's a struggle after people have paid me big money. They make an action plan, but then they don't fulfill the action plan and practice with the action plan.
It
So
is.
I
It
mean,
is. It
it's
is
a,
a struggle. It is a struggle, and there is no timeline for this, right?
right,
I can't
right,
say that in the next 2 years I'll make my employees responsible for their own career. That will never ever happen.
right.
It's a continuous process.
Absolutely true.
It is definitive a struggle. It is definitive depending on the market dynamics. These days, the
Right.
loyalties of new entrants is on the lower side as compared to what we were, right? So you have to really work on those. So by the time here in the current scenario, by the time you start getting results, the employee for whatever reasons is looking out for some other job somewhere else,
Absolutely
right?
true.
So that's something that, so you have to create an environment where people are feeling associated with or loyal with,
Right, very true. And,
and that
and you want to
be
create
part
that
of the,
ecosystem where one wants to learn,
yeah,
right?
they need to feel that whatever I'm doing is being valued and I'm learning, and that learning is also being valued by the organization. So in pandemic, in current, I can definitely share this in the current year, sorry, 2020, last year, pandemic year. I think we had one of the fantastic scores on our learning and developmental initiatives for the organization.
Right, right,
Now, I'll take one small example. Bangalore people, they used to spend at least 2.5 hours every day
right,
on commuting to office and back.
right, right.
At home, they have another 2 hours available for them to really invest in themselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because
So once,
Bangalore traffic is a nightmare. Only
yes,
place where I miss my flights.
once you tap into those kind of an time availability,
Right.
that does help people to really and make them sensitized. That does help people to really look at their learning and career more seriously and investing in that.
Interesting that you say this, because one of the things which human beings require for themselves is downtime, time to unwind, right? Failing which you're not feeling good about yourself, you're not feeling enthusiastic, you're not feeling energetic. And how can people who are not energized energize and engage others? Now, uh, in a lot of organizations, this is not just in India but even in the US, people take pride and it's like a badge of honor to work late hours and nonsense like that, without realizing that that's counterproductive. And studies show you, because a lot of organizations in Europe are moving to 4-day weeks. And Microsoft actually did an entire experiment on this in 2018, 18 or 19, where they went to a 4 day week and productivity went up by 38%, right? Any insights that you want to share with the people who are watching on this?
Well, there is always a debate that happens in terms of what I would say hourly work and a smart work. So people
Right,
always, you need to be smart. So whatever you have to do, whatever you can do for in 8 hours, can you do it in 6 hours?
right,
And then that gets translated. Whatever you can do in 1 week, can you do it in 5 days or can you do it in 4 days? Now, whole essence there is it is not that 4 days or 5 days or 8 hours or 6 hours that are important. It is the time you are giving employee to really unwind them.
right, right,
That is important. Now, the productivity is up with whatever surveys that are coming. Is people are finding better time for themselves, and
right.
that's the reason their productivity is going up. That's what I
No,
believe.
no, I completely agree with you because I've been studying employee engagement activities in many organizations, and sometimes I get this funny kind of briefs also that take them out whitewater rafting, engage them, build some passion in them. And I say that's like taking a monkey to a L'Oreal salon, right? Because cosmetic change, you don't really change the character or the mindset of the monkey, right?
Yeah, that's
Uh,
what HR team. There are many videos that do come in. HR team does
yeah.
now.
And then most HR functions without understanding that engagement happens at a deeper level of trust, at a deeper level of openness, at a deeper level of creating a culture of failure, a culture of learning. Because engagement is mostly like having a evening out, a beer session out. You would see this a lot in the garden city, especially,
Yeah,
or it's about having a stand-up comic and having some fun, or having a floozy kind of a gratitude week or whatever, without really getting people to dive deep into the ethos and the essence of what gratitude really means, or what diversity and inclusion really means, right? uh, what do you think are the best ways to really engage employees and bind their loyalty with an organization?
I think we should be focusing on building their characters. You've already hired people based on certain characteristics that they've showed during your interview process, right? And I believe the interview process should not limit it to only check on the technical competency or the role or so, but more to essentially to do with the values and the characteristics of the employees or the prospect.
Right, right,
When you start investing in those, right? When you motivate employees to really develop their characteristics, the competency automatically follows.
true.
You just need to keep a track of that. And I always give this example, right? Probably Vinod Kambli was a better player in terms of competency
Absolutely.
as compared to Sachin Tendulkar.
Yeah, I mean, far more superior. I've got this in my Mojo Inspirator book also, where we talk about how it is not your competence but your character that takes you beyond. And unfortunately,
Tendulkar score more because it's a character, right?
yeah,
So that's the difference, and that's what people have to try.
and I think that that's why I use this line: great parents make great leaders. Because whether it's parents or managers, they don't focus on the character, they only focus on the talent and competence, without realizing the talent and competence is overrated. And like I was telling you earlier, I'm going to do a jerry go around with you, right? Like a merry go round. And I'm going to take you back to the earlier thought that you shared in the very opening, where you said that we should focus on character when we are interviewing, and that was the thought I had sent out about you, without realizing that we would be talking so much about this through the entire session. And I had said higher character, train competence. While in most organizations people hire competence and then lose out because they can't train character, because training character is a more cumbersome process. You require a lot of patience, a lot of energy yourself, because that's what we do as coaches. Now, the biggest realization which I have seen is that most people, whether they are in HR, even the senior most leaders, they are not trained to interview people to assess character.
Yeah.
And the sad part of it is that many people this is the arrogance and the ego of people who think that they're from the best of colleges, and the me, myself, and I, we are the three most important people in the organization. When I sit on interview panels, because a lot of HR people hire me only to sit down and assess character, and I have a
Yeah.
set of 10 questions which I ask, because the biodata I have studied overnight, and I know exactly where that person is hedging, fudging, whatever, right? So I know that this guy has a degree. So I tell them that your degree from this fancy education system and all your experience, it doesn't count for me. So if you're sitting on your laurels, your laurels are in the wrong place, right? And I ask them a set of 10 questions, which is purely character based. But what surprises me is that the other three people on the panel typically come and start reading the biodata in the interview session itself. They've not read the biodata earlier. And these are people who are now going to be responsible for bad hiring. And typically they start, okay, tell us something about yourself. I find that so offensive, because what about respect for the candidate? Because the candidate has come with on his time, on his investment and his effort, because he needs a job. But hey, you are being paid to do this,
Yeah.
and you not invested your time and effort to understand what this person is all about. And what are your thoughts on this?
If somebody is asking questions based on the profile that has been submitted to that interviewer, I think that's where the candidate has already won, because he is ensuring whatever he's written in the CV, he is being asked only on those. So
Right,
he's already prepared for it, right?
right,
Right. So that's something which is, in my opinion, which should not be done.
right,
Whatever is not written in the CV, that's where the good interview technique that comes in place.
right. And the 10 questions I asked to assess character are a trade secret, because otherwise nobody will hire me to sit on interview panels. But how do you assess character?
Now, few things. Number one is the kind of a background that the individual has. Now, in the US kind of a scenario, honestly,
Right,
and that's
right,
cultural differentiation comes in.
right.
US kind of a scenario, you can't really be asking the family background and those kind of a thing. But in India, it is perfectly fine. These days, the things are changing in India as well. But for example, if somebody says my parents were teachers, I would probably feel that, teacher, we as a society considering teaching as a noble profession. I would feel that the person would be carrying that particular characteristics in his or her day-to-day activities.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that you are assessing character not just by what they are saying, but you are actually investing time, even in an interview, to
Yeah.
dive deeper into what is the value system that a person brings to the table, and what is the kind of environment, the nature and nurture, as I call it, of this
Absolutely.
person, and what are the choices this person has made in her
As,
or his life
as a
journey.
manager, as a HR manager, or as a people manager, or as anybody, I can't teach any employee or anyone for that matter the attitude or the loyalty or integrity and honesty. I can't teach that. That has to come in
Absolutely.
from their background.
Absolutely. And
I
I differ a little on that, because that's what we teach as coaches, because it's difficult, not impossible, but it's a longer process, because and I give the simple example of a classic movie from India, Do Aankhein Bara Haath, if you remember, made by the famous Mr. V Shantaram, where he showed that the most hardened criminals can be transformed, right? And I have a friend called Abu Bakr, who was a part of a terrorist outfit earlier. He's in the UK now. He teaches Muslim boys boxing, but boxing is just the medium. What he's teaching them is jihad does not mean holy war against others. Jihad means the holy struggle within, to stay on the right path. There are several stories in the book. There's this person called Sacha, who murdered somebody at the age of 19 and is now an MIT fellow. He's in my Mojo Inspirator book. So you can build that character and that integrity, but it takes some time, and it's a choice which that individual has to make.
it cannot be in volume.
In
What you are saying is right, but it cannot be in volume.
Yeah, and it's a choice that the individual has to make. We cannot force it on them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to finally ask you one simple insight, which after which I'm going to hand over to JC, because this insight is about what we are doing. Every organization likes to be in this great places to work,
Just a
rating.
sec, we have
And
just
and I had
one
shared
second.
that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, just give me a sec. Just hold on. Just hold on. Yeah, I'm back. Sorry.
Okay, so no worries. So great places to work is a great rating process, etc., and good to be there. But technically speaking, no place can be great to work because people join a place, but they end up working for a manager. And no matter how small an organization, whether it's 100 people or 625 people like you have right now at Simeo, or 60,000 people that would be there in an Accenture or a Satyam or a Infosys or a Genpact, right? Or maybe 6 lakh people. It's technically impossible for the CXOs, the CEO, the CHRO, the chief learning officer to monitor how people are behaving with their direct reports on a day-to-day basis. It's not possible to monitor that. And that's exactly the kind of parameters which great places to work looks at. But that said, uh, what I feel is that what is more easier for CXOs, CHROs, chief learning officers to do is to create a ecosystem like you spoke earlier of a culture of learning where not just the hypers and the hypots are invested in, but every individual in an organization, right from the top to the bottom, is invested in. Because whether the top likes it or not, they require coaching. They don't understand that, right? Uh, and
They
that's what.
believe that they don't require.
Sorry.
They believe and they have a firm opinion they don't require because they've
That
been there and done that types,
yeah,
so they don't require.
and therein lies the problem. And I've covered this in my book called The Ninth Habit with stories. And I show this very powerful video of a very high profile surgeon called Atul Gawande, who's a surgeon and an entrepreneur, where he thought that he's cat's whiskers as far as surgery is concerned, till a mentor of his came in the surgery room and showed him where he's going wrong. So I think the higher you go, the more you require a coach and a mentor to kind of keep you grounded. Uh, but this learning culture in a lot of organizations, especially in our geography, is not being percolated down, and that's the reason we have created something called Great Organizations Affirm Learning, which is goal ratings as we are calling it. Great organizations affirm learning, or great organizations at the rate of learning, and it's based on Peter Senge's fifth discipline. And JC is from Tangram, which is a research agency. JC has worked with JC and Avinash, who are the co-founders of the organization, have worked with some of the most renowned global research organizations earlier. And we've chosen them because we wanted it to be a conscious, conscientious effort, right? And they put the ratings together, which JC will share with you in a while from now. And before getting into that, what I want to share with you is a video. Since we spoke about Genpact, I chosen this video to show you today and to the audience, where Jack Welch of GE is actually telling people that the most important function of an organization is not sales, is not marketing, is not finance. It is HR.
Yeah.
Because how do you invest in the potential and bring out the best in people? Because if you do that, your productivity is 10x, 100x, whatever, right? So I'm going to show you that video and then hand over to JC. JC Desai has joined us.
Sure.
JC, that's Vivek Purekar. So let's watch
Hey,
the video. Let's
Hi,
watch.
good
Let's
evening,
watch the.
sir.
Yeah. Let's watch the video and then I hand over to
Yeah.
JC. Here we go.
HR is, without question, one of the number one or number two most important functions in a company. I happen to believe it's number one. Many others think finance is the key to success in a company. HR is the driving force behind what makes a winning team. We make the argument that the team that fields the best players wins. HR is involved in making sure we field the best players. That's their job. And their job is to sit in every meeting, be involved in every part of the business equation. They're not the health and happiness, picnics, benefits team. They're the development team, developing today's and tomorrow's leaders. And then if you have an organization where HR is relegated to forms and benefits, you got the wrong game going. I like to use one analogy. If you were running a sports team, whether it be the New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, would you like to hang out with the head of player personnel or the team accountant? Who would help you build the best team to field? Not the team accountant. Same thing's true in business. You get yourself a great HR person, preferably one with multi skills in manufacturing, perhaps before, or in sales, who happens to be a people person, who understands that the role of the HR leader is to be both pastor and parent. Pastor in keeping secrets, and parent in telling it straight. You get that person who loves to see people grow, and you've got yourself a winner.
I think Vivek ji, that sums up what we have discussed over the past
Yes.
45, 50 minutes, because we are talking about not just bringing in the best, but bringing in people and making them the best,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And how HR actually has that huge role and responsibility in ensuring that you have the A team, right? Because if you have the A team, productivity, effectiveness, and profitability will go 100x. And I think Jack Welch kind of summed that up in that simple 2-minute clip, that it's not just about creating frivolous engagement activities like play and picnic and games, and that's okay, but the real thing is to create that culture of learning, that culture of trust. And I think that's what HR people, and especially the people in OD, have to understand, because that's a huge responsibility, because you're helping people to grow through learning. And that's why great organizations affirm learning, we feel is the need of the hour. With that, Vivek ji, I'm going to hand over to JC, who's going to exchange some thoughts and insights about what we are doing in the rating. I've shared the ratings with you over the
Yeah.
email, and we would like you to be a part of the learning circle. We are not calling it an advisory committee or a steering committee. We are calling it a learning circle, that we are all learning from each other how to make this process bigger and better with all your views. So it's by HROD, for HROD, through HROD. That's the way we have designed it. So over to
Thanks.
you, JC. Thank you so much.
So thanks, sir, for joining us today. And I have a couple of just a couple of questions. I'm audible. I'm clear.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So I just have a couple of questions. The whole process is to fine tune this rating system. So the whatever we've laid out in the questionnaire, we want to build on that through the talks we had with different experts and see how best we can get a more holistic kind of evaluation program. So that's where I come in. So I had a couple of questions basis what you discussed just now with Jerry. So you were talking about the training programs that you had with Satyam and Genpact, right? Much earlier on. So what has been the change that you've seen in terms of training program over the years? Any thoughts on that?
But a too broad a question, I would say. But then change in the sense, it is no more one-way traffic which has happened. It is now lead by example, and I think Genpact has done a wonderful job in terms of
Okay.
really setting up something called as a lead by example
Hmm.
as a philosophy for training, right? And
Okay.
especially the leadership training, right? So that's number one change which I have seen, more so with Genpact than Satyam kind of a scenario. That's number one. And number two, over the years, what I have seen is training is not seen as to do a current job. It is, and as me and Jerry were discussing, it is always a futuristic thing. Now, when
Okay.
you're doing something futuristic, that's an investment from an
Hmm.
organization standpoint, but then the employee also needs to have something back as a return on his or her time as well. Like he or
Right.
she investing their careers, investing their time, energy in getting something, getting trained on something. So there had what I have seen a shift is really see a good reward mechanism in terms of when somebody is getting trained or learned on competencies or technologies or in certain areas, in certain cases like characteristics, right?
Okay.
Training is something that's where you get paid to learn something,
Okay.
right? But
Right.
then beyond
Okay.
that, you need to have a reward mechanism, and that's where the shift which
Okay.
has already happened in the industry over the years. That's what I look
Okay.
at it.
Okay. And if you could elaborate on the bit about lead by example, I mean, if you could explain that a bit.
See, training is there are two, three things, right? There are classroom trainings, then there are on-the-job trainings, and then there are virtual trainings, and those are
Right.
multiple. I'll
Right.
not get into the details of that. I think all HR practitioners know about it. But the essence of training, or the success of this training, comes in how do I then train others. That's number one. So train the trainer
Okay.
kind of thing.
Okay.
Whosoever I have trained, can he or she train somebody else? That's number one.
Hmm.
Number two
Okay.
is, how do I make use of the learning in my day-to-day activities? And that's
Okay.
where I would say lead by example. Now I'll give an example. In Genpact, we had a great program called Lead and Leap.
Okay.
Learning, I'll not get
Lead
into
and
it.
leap.
Lead and
Okay.
Leap. That's
Right.
Genpact's confidential programs as such. But then those programs really talked about developing leaders within, and
Hmm.
then they used it, the success stories of that, they used it as the training material itself.
Okay.
If I have gone through certain lead programs few years
Okay.
back, my
Okay.
success in the organization using that training is being taught to my new batches.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Right?
Got
So
it.
that's why I would say lead by example. And that was
Okay.
something that was very interesting.
Okay. So they will take how you adapted the program or how you used it and
And my
talk about it.
success becomes a
Yeah.
story
Others.
for
Okay.
others to follow.
Interesting. Okay. Got it. Okay. Another question I had was, you talked about empowering people to own their learning plan, right? So, okay, I'm a researcher. So what I wanted out of this was, what are the, if we had to evaluate this bit about how people would kind of own the training program, how would you evaluate this? How, what variables, what factors would you consider to evaluate this?
Uh, Couple of points, and that would typically may not be the immediate ones, but
Hmm.
in my view, there will be, it has to be measured on a long term scale, right? For
Okay.
example, in your
Huh.
engagement survey, you can have one question: how
Okay.
confident you are about your future? Now, if somebody is saying that I'm confident about my future for next 3 years, that means I think I have done a fair job in training
Hmm.
that person and getting him or her ready for the future.
Okay.
So that's one of the evaluation technique that I would use in terms
Okay.
of success of my training,
Okay.
right? Number one.
Okay. Huh.
Number two is again, per surveys or employee surveys are the classical tools that people
Right.
can use,
Hmm.
right? Number two is what my customers are saying.
Mm-hmm.
If the customer is naming some people, right,
Hmm.
here is the person that I see that as an representative of your organization, he's done wonderfully well.
Mm-hmm.
And that ownership of that individual he has demonstrated with the customer, and that's where I
Okay.
would say that that's the success of training in terms of evaluation that is coming in.
Okay.
And number three, at an individual level, and that there is no measurement scale, I believe for that. But then, if somebody says I am a better person than yesterday, and that's where the
Okay.
PD, personal development plan that I spoke about. If somebody
Okay.
says I'm a better person today than yesterday, I think that's the
Huh.
better way of measuring it and evaluating the success of training of individual ownership as such.
Okay. Okay. So if we look at these three aspects, we'll get a better sense of how much they've accepted this whole learning, or taken the
Covers
responsibility,
the
right?
three aspects, right? It covers the aspect of customer, it covers the aspect of the organization, it covers the aspect of the individual.
Individual. Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. You also spoke about, when you're hiring people, that you would look at not only the individual competency but also the value system, right? Uh, for the individual. Now, in the context of evaluating a company as goal oriented towards learning, um, what is the value system that we need to keep in mind, or what are the key factors of that value system?
See, I won't correlate it to learning, but then I would correlate with the organization itself. I'm not
Okay.
hiring somebody only from learning perspective, while that person has to have learning orientation, but then I'm not hiring only for that. I'm
Right.
hiring
Right.
the characteristics like your values, which includes attitude, which includes honesty, integrity, right,
Right.
and loyalty. These are the four basic core values that an individual should have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we need to check during hiring process
Mm-hmm.
how. individual has demonstrated, now, especially for younger generation, there are various examples or questions that you can use to really check on the value system of the individual,
Okay. Right.
including the background that they are coming in,
Huh.
including what they want to do in their careers, including their certain situations, how they've
Right.
overcome
Right.
certain not so good situation or certain good situations that they can elaborate, wherein
Hmm.
you can really gauge their honesty and integrity.
Right.
And that comes in from CV also. Like, and Jerry and I spoke about how do you read CVs. If there are any gaps in the CV, especially on education, and I always check this, and not as a selection criteria, but when somebody has a gap in the education, and if
Mm-hmm.
that is upfront about it,
Right.
right? Then it talks about the honesty and acceptance of the accountability of that particular gap. 90% of the employees or 90% of the candidates do end up in saying, "Oh, I was down with jaundice
Hmm.
during my education period," or somebody had typically would have passed away.
Okay.
That's the reason there is a break.
Right.
90% good people would say that, but then
Okay.
in reality, 50%, more than 50% people or 70% people would have flunked in their 12th or in their graduation years.
Okay.
How do you
So
gauge that, and how do you really how those candidates are owning up that? It
that.
talks about
Okay.
really the value system of the individual.
Okay. So this is about how they deal with the failures and how do they express that, right?
That's the next
Hmm.
step, but then it talks
Okay.
about their honesty.
Honesty. Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it talks about their honesty, right?
Right.
So that's something which has happened years ago,
Right. Right.
and they still own
Okay.
it.
Right.
I give a classic. I give an example during Satyam days in my
Mm-hmm.
early Satyam days.
Right. Right.
We started doing background verifications, and
Mm-hmm.
I had to let go somebody who was working with the organization for almost 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah, his background verification of his university degree had come out negative. Now that
Oh,
means
okay.
I'm talking about somebody who's 50 years of age, worked with the company for almost
For
20
20
years.
years. Okay.
And prior to that, he would have graduated from the university almost 25, 30 years back. And I
Mm-hmm.
had to go, let
Okay.
him go based on the background verification report. Now,
Verification.
so whatever mischief that one would have done does come back to haunt you.
Haunt you.
I
Okay. Okay.
how you own it, how
Hmm.
honest you are about it, right? That is
Right.
that is something as a value system that I would look at.
Okay. Okay. So that brings to mind another interesting question, which is when you are looking at the honesty factor of the individual and also the how they deal with failures. Let's look at organizations in the same light. Okay. In terms of learning and in terms of training, is there any organization in your experience or any where they have actually accepted the failures within the organization with the employees? I mean, does that help the employees in any way?
It
If
does,
being
it
honest,
does
yes.
definitely, it does definitely, right? And I have been privileged to work with best in class organization in their given areas. We
Okay.
name NIIT, we name Satyam, erstwhile Satyam, and not the current one, or we talk about Hestrong and Genpact. I think they were the best people, and
Mm-hmm.
my current organization, I think we are the best people in our given areas, and that I am
Okay.
associated. Unless
Okay.
until I have that confidence and I have that conviction, I
Hmm.
won't be able to make best out of my current job, or I won't be able to do justice to my organization. So that's number one. Now, all these companies have grown because companies have learned out of their failures,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
And company is made up of people. So
Right.
culturally, all these companies have those people, or as their belief that failures does teach you a lot. Yeah, people,
Mm-hmm.
that we fail, right? I have failed, and each one of us who are on live session, I think everybody of us has haven't been successful always, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Yeah, it's quite
But then,
normal,
as
huh?
an organization, if you are taking your employees' failure in stride, and that becomes your culture, I think, and these organizations have also learned through their failures.
Okay. Okay, but do they own up their failures? Ha- have you seen that happening?
Of that failure, yes, they have owned up. They have owned up
Okay,
and they missed the
okay,
bus. Like for
okay.
example, NIT did miss a bus. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I joined NIT, NIT was about 4,000 people, better company to work with than Satyam. Satyam was 3,500 people. But then
Okay,
Satyam focused only on cost aspect of it. And
right.
in NIT, we focused on the brainy work, as we call it, as right, the
Mm-hmm.
cream la cream kind of a work, and we
Right.
missed that was during the .NET bubble in
Mm-hmm.
2001. While
Okay,
Satyam went on to become a $2 billion organization, NIT still remained into hundreds of millions of dollars.
right.
But
Okay.
still, that organization did extremely well within given circumstances.
Pardon, I missed the last part.
That organization did extremely well,
Right.
coming out of that failure, and did extremely
Okay.
well in the
Okay.
circumstances.
Okay. And how did they present it to the employees when they, the whole failure?
Well, probably I'm not a right person because I wasn't there
Okay.
that time. Yeah, I did
Right.
leave the organization about a year or two after that, and I came
Okay.
back down.
Okay.
I
No
really
issues.
couldn't talk about that.
Okay. Okay. I have one last question, which is
Yeah.
what we thought as researchers, what we would do in this evaluation program was not only to understand the individual's role in the organization, but also the individual's motivation towards life. So what is his, what drives him to life and what drives him to work? So things like, is work an expression of my talents, my abilities, or is work only a means of earning income and controlling my life? So this is based on Dr. Halen's model, and there are about 6 to 7 motivations that we talk about, or it could be work, which is I want to create a status, a recognition in the society, therefore I work. Or it could be about I want to be supportive to my family, provide sufficiently for them, therefore I work. So one of these becomes the key driver to their life and to work. Okay, so the evaluation program is going to start with this to understand the individual's motivation towards life itself, and then go on to understanding how good the organization is in terms of the learning and training and all of that. Okay, so what do you think about that system? What do you feel?
Well, I think that is there in our culture, right? If you look at Indian culture as such, right?
Right.
Uh, Well, we use a term called prapancha, the grihastha or prapancha that we have
Hmm. Okay.
as a role, as a responsibility of family and work and being a
Right.
breadwinner of family. But it also talks about achieving life goals through prapancha. So achieving adhyatma through prapancha type of thing,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
That is something which is different than what Western practitioners follow, in my view, right?
Okay.
In my view, and that's where the characteristics like Taj example, which Jerry and I spoke about, or there are many more such examples in
Mm-hmm.
corporate world, right?
Okay.
Wherein people have achieved their life goals through their work. And one of my earlier boss,
Mm-hmm.
he was so committed. I won't name him. In my earlier company, in my earlier manager, I've been privileged to get excellent managers, right?
Okay.
Uh, he worked for 4 days continuously, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a situation that he fainted on Bandra station,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Now, one way to look at it that he's so committed to work,
Right.
but other way is he's trying to achieve something which is his life goal by
Right.
through his commitments, through his dedication, through his value system,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
right?
Okay.
Continuous 4 days of work that would have earned him certain revenue or certain KRAs or scorecard for the organization,
Right.
etc.
Right. Right.
That's one aspect of it. But if you just look beyond that,
Mm-hmm.
it is actually his pressure of achieving something as a life goal,
Okay.
which he achieved through this dedication. That's how I look at it.
Okay. Okay. Could you repeat that? Prapanchak, you said, right?
Prapancha.
Okay. Okay.
the
Is
the the,
there?
the Grihastha ashrama or the four ashramas that we have
Okay.
in
Okay.
Indian system. The
Okay.
the family life, I would say.
Okay, okay, I'll check up this definitely. Very
Yes.
interesting. So what I'm saying is, so one of these becomes the drive more important than the others. To it's a certain degree. It's not, to a degree, one of them becomes more important than the others. So we want to measure that before actually getting on to.
I would say life goals can be achieved through multiple channels, and
Okay,
work goals could be one of the channel to achieve your life goals.
okay, okay, okay,
Yeah, I can still achieve my life goals through the kind of work that I do in my current company or my current role. I'm not about me, but as an
yeah,
individual
yeah,
matter,
okay.
can achieve their life goals, and if they are successful in doing so, I
Mm-hmm.
think it will definitely change their status or their positioning in the organization differently.
Okay.
You're suddenly not looking at achieving X dollars of revenue or
Right.
retaining my kind of people or delivering certain product for a customer in a short span of time. But then you're looking at something beyond that. Doing
Mm-hmm.
these activities happens to be just the steps in achieving your larger goals.
Okay.
That's how I
Okay.
would look at it.
Okay. Okay. As an expert, have you examined people in this context? Like when
Oh,
you were,
I do. I do in my interviewing process. I have
okay.
asked people wherein how they have looked at their own career beyond the work that they do.
Okay. Any hypothesis that you have about these different personality types? Do you have any hypothesis that you could share with
May
us?
not be immediately I can narrate those
Yeah.
kind of, but then that would be little, I will require some time to put together and then can
Okay.
share.
Okay. No issues. No
But
issues.
there are people, and in an interview process, whether you're existing employees or your candidates that you're hiring
Mm-hmm.
as a HR professional, as an HR practitioner, if you just go and touch their uh, that emotional cord, the
Right.
kind of stories that they have are amazing stories. Are
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Each individual would have one or other story to narrate wherein they've
Right.
done exceptionally well. And that goes beyond their current work.
Right. Right. One of the hypotheses that I have basis, meaning I've done consumer research for many years. So one of the hypotheses that I have is that people who are focused on earning a living, or are focused on achieving an income, that is why they go to work. They are far more controlling in their work behavior. So they're very organized, but they're very controlling in the sense that they want to make sure that everything goes by their system of thought, and they want to control so that the outcome is reached. There's a definite outcome, and there's a tangible income or a monetary reward that is assured, as compared to someone who's not that controlled, but is gives a lot more freedom to, let's say, his juniors, and helps them grow, and is therefore more creative. So a couple of hypotheses like
Possible,
that.
yeah, possible. I would differ on this. Like I have a different take on this, and maybe I
Okay.
may be coming in more from a ancient classical thought of my parents that they taught me, or my grandparents that they taught me. If you
Right.
start chasing money, like there is no end to it.
Yes,
Money to be like if I'm earning money, right? There is only X amount of money that is required to live a good life, and
that's
that's a
true.
very relative term. How to
That's
live a
right.
good life is a very relative term, right?
That's
Good
right.
life in your view would be different than what I look at it,
Yes, I know.
right? So that
Right.
so that hypothesis I would differ there a
Okay.
bit. If you make
Okay.
money as your sole motive
Right.
to earn for living, then
Right.
probably you are bound. Like then you change jobs or you start doing illegal
Many
things,
jobs. Right.
immoral things also.
Right.
Like
That is
one of my again, and that's a classic thing. One of my earlier manager used to give me this example. Money is earned by the smugglers also.
right.
That's
Right.
something
Right.
that that's their job. Is
Right.
that something that you would look at that?
Right. That is
So
true.
that cannot be your sole motive. It
Yeah.
has to be a vehicle. It can be your stepping stone. It can be your, as one of the returns that you're getting out of your job. But it
Right.
cannot be the sole motive for you
Sole
to really,
motive. Okay. Got it. Okay.
that's how I look at it.
Okay. No issues. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for answering my questions. So Jerry is back, and yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, JC, for those thought-provoking insights, and I think some great, uh, thoughts and insights have come in from Mr. Purekar, which are best practices which he's doing in terms of creating a learning culture, and I think one of the thoughts which got provoked in my mind is that probably we should also include how the interviewing process is done. Do they focus on character or on competence? And this would give us a lot of insight, because that's where the process of learning starts. Like, when I'm sitting on interview panels, uh, I told you, ask a set of 10 questions, and I actually give people till the seventh question. At the seventh question is when I decide whether this person will join or not. And if this person doesn't answer that question satisfactorily, which, by the way, is tell me about a significant failure you had in the past 6 months, and the question prior to that is, tell me about a significant success you had in the past 6 months. And people have a laundry list of successes, but when it comes to failures, they're like, no, no, nothing, no failure. Then I'm like, okay, thank you very much. We won't be getting back to you, right? Because and people are always perplexed why on this question, because till the seventh question, I'm also using the opportunity to coach this person about life, about life goals, right? So my first question is, who am I? And they don't know. My second question is, what is your purpose? What is your mission in life? They don't know. They can't answer it. Third question is, what is our mission and vision? They can't answer it. So they've come prepared for the interview, but they don't even know what the mission and vision of Simeo is. So why have you come here for an interview? Just for a job, to pay the bills, which means you won't be bringing energy. So anyway, I've just given out my trade secrets. I won't give out more questions.
No, no, no.
So
Yeah, but then beyond that, Jerry, what plays a role also for an interviewer or a hiring manager
yeah,
is gut feel,
is
right?
the
Is the gut feel.
absolutely,
Right?
absolutely, and
He
it's a
needs
gut
to
feel,
be,
because
the hiring manager needs to be absolutely sure about his or her gut feel. And
absolutely true.
I take a pride in saying that whatever hires that I've done so far, probably 2% of the people were bad hires.
No, no, absolutely, absolutely true, Sanma. The gut feel for someone like me is even higher, because I use all my NLP and Gestalt training just to understand what the person is, whether the person is lying or hedging or fudging. You can
Yeah,
tell, right? I mean, even if you're not an NLP trained person, simply by listening, you can
true,
tell. And I think what
true.
interviewers need to understand is listening, because in a lot of interviews, I've seen interviewers talking more than asking more, right? So I think
Yep,
that
yep,
therein lies so maybe that is another thing which we can include in the rating. It's just a thought.
absolutely. And I
Yeah,
would love to help you on that, whatever way I
yeah.
can.
Okay, and you have to share those Sanskrit shlokas that you
Oh,
shared
yes,
in
I'll
the,
do.
yeah,
I'll
you'll
do
have to
that.
send it to me on WhatsApp. Thanks
Yes,
a lot, JC.
absolutely.
Thanks a
Thanks,
lot,
Jerry. Thanks.
Vivek ji, and have a good
Thanks.
evening. Thank
Thanks
you so
to
much.
all those who
Bye.
joined on Facebook Live.
Thank you.
With
Thank you to all the people who participated.
all the people.
There are some nice comments which have been posted. People have liked the insights, and thank you to all of you for
Do we
watching.
have a
And
recording of this,
yes,
Jerry?
it's on Facebook. I'll forward it to you right now.
Yeah. All right.
All
All right.
right.
Thank you.
All the
Thank you.
best and have a good evening. Namaste. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.